about 10 pages on here, he makes the point, so this is page 298. He talks about how purpose is a virtue. Having a purpose, having something you're planning to do. Now remember, all virtues are within the context that rationality is the primary virtue, so your purpose has to be rationally defined for a rational reason and so on. But within the context of being rational, okay, remember the context, within the context of being rational, having a purpose is a virtue. So you can't say that a bank robber has his purpose and therefore he's virtuous to that extent. I don't want to hear any replies or comments or questions like that. I'm sick of those. So here's the quote from Peikoff. To regard purpose as a moral value, what is that doing if we say it's good for man to have a purpose in life? We judge men by whether or not they have a rational purpose in life. To regard purpose as a moral value is to acknowledge this essential need to man's life, to embrace its fulfillment as good, and then to fulfill it deliberately. One does this by adopting purpose as a principle of one's actions. So you just say in planning, not what you're going to have for breakfast tomorrow, but what you're going to do next week, next month, and next year. You say on principle. You use the principle of long-term adjustment of purpose. Some aim. What's your goal? Now, to call that a value is to acknowledge that you understand that man has to live long-term. Now, you can just flail about and not decide what you're going to do for years and years at a time. We have that luxury in modern society. Back in the ancient world, you had to get serious and plant your grain. Man literally evolved in a situation where you couldn't flibber-flabber, you couldn't jibberty-gibbet, you had to work. And you had to plan long-term if you were going to be really successful. So it's an essential need of man's life, and the happier a man is, the more rational and long-term his plans were and are. Okay, enough said on purpose. This is a nice deep concept here. On page 303, pride as moral ambitiousness. Pride as being morally ambitious. And I just say get the book and read it because it's a great book. Every section of it's fantastic. So that's a good one. You should get the book and read on your own. But I just want to quote a couple of things. Again, this is all inside the chapter Virtue, all of our samples. And this will be our last sample. But this one is on the initiation of physical force as evil. Now we start off with a quick comment that to refrain from force is not necessarily a mark of good character. Okay? You're not necessarily a good guy because you don't rob, steal, plunder, rape, and exploit. One can be thoroughly evil, yet recoil from wielding a fist or a club oneself. For example, the coward who tries to destroy others by psychological or ideological, not physical, means. But to initiate force is to commit a major evil. In the long run, this evil is an inevitable result of irrationality. It is an inevitable result of irrationality in the long run. No way around it. And then he quotes Ayn Rand. A rational mind does not work under compulsion. It does not subordinate its grasp of reality to anyone's orders, directives, or controls. It does not sacrifice its knowledge, its view of the truth, to anyone's opinions, threats, wishes, plans, or welfare. Such a mind may be hampered by others. It may be silenced, prescribed, imprisoned, or destroyed. It cannot be forced. A gun is not an argument. An example and symbol of this attitude is Galileo. Now, just project what this would mean in reality. If you cannot force the mind, that would mean that in eras and epochs of history when force was the rule, the mind would be absent. Now, is that what we find? Well, we would find First of all, let's just split history in two halves and look at the easiest halves, before and after the Industrial Revolution. Now, Britain dragged along in the Industrial Revolution for 150 years. They didn't even have the frickin' train. Okay? 150 years they dragged along in the Industrial Revolution because there was so much state control and so forth. So we would find that where more freedom occurs, even more brilliance of men's minds able to come out. And that's exactly what we find. We find that when America gets established, 150 years takes you from horses and carriages to atomic bombs and the first computers. So 150 years brought them from the first steam engines up to being on the verge of steam engines and so forth. That era had to be gone across, but why did it take so long? And here's another point. They had the steam engine in ancient Greece. They just never used it to anything applicable, but there's drawings of it and models were made of it, and they heated water, put the steam in here and made this little turbine spin. It was like a toy or something, But to apply that to realities was beyond their grasp, because the philosopher was really in the ivory tower in the ancient world. They really believed that slaves existed to free men to do thinking, free the intelligentsia to do their noble things. So they just never but in an era of freedom, that's ancient Greece. That steam engine I'm mentioning was Hero of Alexandria. They had some drawings of it. Alexandria is the Greek port city at the end of the Nile River. Now, that's why even those inventions and stuff, just even though they weren't put into practice, they were at least invented and come up with and imagined and created when? In a period of freedom ruled by the Greeks. The Greeks were the freest period in all of history up to the birth of America. And America was inspired by Aristotle. America is an Aristotelian nation. Just put that on record. So anyways, there we go. The initiation of force is evil. And there's more in this chapter on virtue. I invite you to get the book. It's a fantastic book. Just wanted to say a little more then about rationality, about its value to objectivists, about its value to everybody, and to alert you to the essence of integration. The virtues can't be practiced in isolation, and that you get more from them by practicing them all coherently.